Listen closely. Can you hear them? Whispers on the wind, tales carried on the breeze. They speak of shadows on moonlit highways. They tell of encounters that chill the soul. These are the stories of the open road, tales that truckers tell with a shudder. They are warnings whispered in the darkness, stories of the restless spirits that haunt the highways. These are the chronicles of the unexplained. They are glimpses into the heart of fear. Journey with us now, if you dare. Venture into the world of truckers who have seen too much. They have stared into the abyss of the supernatural. They have learned the hard way. The road is a lonely place, especially after the sun goes down. But be warned, these stories are not for the faint of heart. They are filled with the things that go bump in the night. The echoes of terror resonate within them. Are you prepared to face the darkness? Are you ready to confront the unknown? Then climb aboard, fasten your seatbelt, and prepare yourself, because the ride ahead is going to be a bumpy one.
Rain lashed against Tom's windshield, each drop a tiny hammer against the glass. Thunder rattled the cab of his 18-wheeler, the sound reverberating through the metal frame. He squinted through the downpour, the wipers struggling to keep up with the deluge. The highway stretched before him, a ribbon of black in a world of gray, seemingly endless and foreboding. He was behind schedule, tired and ready for a break. The long hours on the road were taking their toll. That's when he saw her, a shadowy figure emerging from the curtain of rain, a lone figure huddled by the side of the road, drenched and shivering. A young woman in a white dress, the fabric clinging to her like a second skin. She was soaked to the bone, her thumb extended hopefully. Tom hesitated, his mind racing. He knew the rules about picking up hitchhikers. It was dangerous, especially in weather like this. But something about her, the storm, her vulnerability, made him pull over. He couldn't just leave her there. She climbed in, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with fear or perhaps something else.
"Thank you, mister. I need to get to the next town." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper.
She wouldn't say another word. Her eyes, wide and vacant, stared straight ahead, unblinking. Tom tried to make conversation, asking her where she was from, where she was headed, but she remained silent. Her presence filled the cab with an unnatural chill, the air growing colder with each passing mile. Finally, they reached the town. Tom pulled into a brightly lit diner, the neon lights flickering in the rain. "Let's get you some coffee," he said, hoping to warm her up and maybe get her to talk. But the seat beside him was empty. She had vanished without a trace. He rushed out into the storm, searching for the woman, his heart pounding in his chest. Had she disappeared into the night? The road was empty, the rain relentless. A waitress hurried out, wiping her hands on her apron, a look of concern on her face. "You see a young woman in a white dress?" Tom asked, his voice shaking.
"You picked her up?" The waitress's eyes widened.
"That's the ghost of Highway 13. She's been haunting this stretch of road for years. She warns people, warns them about..." "About what?" Tom asked, his curiosity piqued.
"Just be careful out there, driver." The waitress's words echoed in his mind as he got back into his truck, the storm still raging outside.
The moon hung low in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the deserted rest stop. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Jake pulled his rig into the shadows, weary after a long haul. The journey had been grueling, and he could feel the fatigue settling deep into his bones. He needed to stretch his legs, maybe grab a quick nap. The thought of a brief rest was tempting, but something about the place made him uneasy. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. It was as if the night creatures were the only witnesses to his presence. Jake shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around him. The chill in the air seemed unnatural, almost as if it was seeping into his very soul. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind seemed to carry a hidden menace. He walked towards the restrooms, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Each step felt like a defiance against the oppressive quiet. As he passed the picnic area, he noticed something glinting in the moonlight. It caught his eye. A small beacon in the darkness. A small silver locket lay half hidden in the grass. It seemed out of place, a relic from another time. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The craftsmanship was delicate, intricate designs etched into the metal. It was cold to the touch and strangely heavy. The weight of it felt significant, as if it carried a burden of its own. It was heart-shaped and engraved with a single word, forever. The word seemed to echo in his mind, filling him with an inexplicable dread. Suddenly, the air turned icy cold. The temperature drop was abrupt, sending a shiver down his spine. Jake felt a presence behind him, cold and menacing. It was as if the shadows themselves had come to life. He spun around, but there was no one there. The emptiness seemed to mock him, amplifying his fear. Just the empty rest stop, bathed in the eerie glow of the moon. The place felt haunted, as if it held secrets long forgotten. He dropped the locket as if it burned him. The sudden release felt like a desperate attempt to rid himself of its sinister energy. He ran for his truck, his heart pounding in his chest. The urgency of his movements was driven by a primal fear. As he drove away, he could have sworn he saw a figure standing in the shadows, watching him go. The silhouette was barely discernible, but its presence was undeniable. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. The malevolent gaze seemed to pierce through the night, following him as he fled. Jake never stopped at that rest stop again. The memory of that night lingered, a constant reminder of the terror he had faced. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon something sinister. The encounter had left an indelible mark on his psyche, something that he was never meant to see. The rest stop remained a place of nightmares, a dark chapter in his life that he would never forget.
The engine of Karen's truck whined as she navigated the winding road. The rain pelted against the windshield, each drop a tiny hammer against the glass, adding to the tension that already gripped her. She was high in the mountains, the headlights of her rig cutting through the dense fog that clung to the asphalt. The fog was so thick it seemed to swallow the light, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. She was on a new route, one she hoped would shave some time off her delivery. The dispatcher had assured her it was a shortcut, but now she was beginning to doubt that decision. But now, alone in the darkness, she was starting to regret her decision. The road was deserted, and the isolation was starting to weigh on her. The hair on the back of her neck prickled with a sense of unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that she was not alone. She felt like she was being watched, followed. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound seemed amplified in the stillness of the night. She glanced at her side mirror. Nothing, just the swirling fog and the dark silhouette of the mountainside. But the feeling persisted. Just the swirling fog and the dark silhouette of the mountainside. But the feeling persisted. It was as if the mountains themselves were watching her, waiting for something. She pressed down on the accelerator, her heart pounding in her chest. The truck roared in response, but the sense of dread only grew stronger. She had to get out of these mountains. The sooner she was back on familiar roads, the better. Suddenly, in her rearview mirror, she saw it. A pair of headlights growing closer, much closer. They seemed to appear out of nowhere, cutting through the fog with an almost supernatural intensity. A pair of headlights growing closer, much closer. She squinted, trying to make out the vehicle behind her, but the fog distorted everything. She was already going well over the speed limit. The needle on the speedometer crept higher, but the truck behind her kept gaining. It was as if it was toying with her, matching her every move. It was as if it was toying with her. The headlights would fall back, then surge forward, as if the driver was playing a game. Finally, she reached a straightaway. A brief moment of relief washed over her as she saw the road stretch out ahead. She pushed her truck to its limit, desperate to outrun whatever was behind her. The engine roared, the tires screeched, but the other truck stayed right on her tail. The truck behind her matched her speed, staying just feet from her trailer. It was so close she could almost feel its presence, a looming shadow in her mirrors. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the truck vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, swallowed by the fog. Karen pulled over, her entire body trembling. She needed a moment to collect herself, to make sense of what had just happened. She sat there for a long time, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The adrenaline was still coursing through her veins, making her hands shake. Just as she was about to start her engine, a voice came from her CB radio. The static crackled, and then a deep, raspy voice filled the cab. A deep, raspy voice that sent chills down her spine. It was a voice she had never heard before, and it seemed to come from nowhere. "You shouldn't be on this road," it said. "It's not safe." The words echoed in her mind, each one dripping with menace. "Turn back, while you still can." The voice faded, leaving only the hum of the engine and the pounding of her heart. Karen never saw the truck again. It was as if it had never existed, a phantom in the night. But she never forgot the voice. It haunted her dreams, a constant reminder of that night, or the terror that gripped her that night. The mountains, the fog, the mysterious truck, they all became part of a story she would never forget, a story she would tell with a shiver in her voice and a chill in her heart.
The open road, a symbol of freedom, of adventure. But for some, the highway is a place of fear, a place where the veil between our world and the next wears thin. These are just a few of the stories that truckers tell. Whispered warnings passed from driver to driver, tales of phantom hitchhikers and haunted rest stops, of unseen pursuers and voices on the wind. Are they just stories? The product of long hours and overactive imaginations? Or is there something more to these tales? Something sinister lurking just beyond the reach of the headlights? Perhaps we'll never know for sure. But one thing is certain. The next time you find yourself driving alone on a dark highway, the next time you see a lone figure standing by the side of the road, the next time you hear a strange noise in the darkness, remember these stories, and remember, you are not alone.